Hello, everybody, and welcome to the latest Blood Red podcast with me, Ian Doyle. Joining me today is our full-time Liverpool correspondent, both home and away, Paul Gorst. Hiya, Paul.
Hello, Ian.
How you doing?
Tired. Very much away this week.
Did you miss me on Saturday? I wasn't at Chelsea.
Well, when you're there, I didn't notice.
Like that,
yes,
is it?
I did. Like the desert's missed the rain, Ian.
You did, yes. You didn't really, did you?
A little bit.
And also joining us, I'm not entirely
Fair to the ratings.
All right. Also joining us is, I'm not sure what to call him. It's Theo Squires. What do we call him? Our
Theo Squires.
Theo Squires. Is he our hitman? He's our hitmaker? Is he like, what's the guy from Sweden? We had this conversation before. Max Martin, isn't it?
The tastemaker?
Yeah. He's the man who pursues the pages. It's Theo Squires. Hello, how are you doing?
I find it quite strange to be on this side of the desk now. I like when Joe left, I thought, I'm going to be the host now. I'm going to be in that chair for most episodes, and you've booted me out of it because of your absence at Stamford Bridge.
Well, I didn't watch
2-3
the game.
weeks.
I haven't seen it. I was doing something
You
else.
didn't miss much.
Yeah, well,
what you were doing was much more fun.
What I will do, though, is probe the pair of you intently on your views on the subject matter of what happened at Stamford Bridge. I'll start with you, Paul. We'll just basically talk about the game itself. Was it a deserved defeat?
No, probably not. I thought Liverpool were much better the second half. You know, I think the reason they've lost the last two games, they was deservedly beaten against Crystal Palace, but they don't quite have the mentality to accept that sometimes a draw is decent and you shut up shop and you take what you've got, and had they had that mindset in the last two games, they could quite well have come away with 2 points as opposed to nothing, but it's not really in their makeup, is it? I thought Andy Robertson generally was a big improvement on Milos Kerkez, but then he falls asleep at the back post, doesn't he? And Liverpool concede a 95th minute winner, which was probably a little bit harsh on balance, but there's no getting away from it that they are in a bit of a rut at the moment, aren't they? And this was always going to be the game where you found out a bit more about whether it was a blip or starting to edge nearer to something a bit more serious. And third defeat in a row coming. I've seen a few people suggest that the international break has come at a good time for Liverpool, but I'd probably suggest the opposite, because when you lose, particularly when you've lost 3 games in a row, you just want to put it right. Or you wouldn't mind a little Carabao Cup game midweek, or something just to focus on and turn the attention elsewhere and start to change the narrative, if you like. But Liverpool are going to have to take the medicine now over the next 2 weeks until the Manchester United game, which, the last couple of seasons, I think everyone's been predicting a comfortable win for Liverpool, and it hasn't happened. So, maybe they were a bit unfortunate to lose, but they were nowhere near the best once again. And Chelsea always seem to raise their level a little bit more when Liverpool come to town. And, the third defeat in a row, and Slot is now in his worst run of form officially, isn't he?
I mean, the only surprise that Kante wasn't playing for Chelsea. They normally, bring him in from wherever he is and just so we can roll him out. But it looks like Caicedo's become the new version of Kante, certainly against Liverpool. Top player, and he gets the first goal. What went wrong overall, though, Theo?
It's probably the issues we've been talking about for the last few games. Liverpool are having to chop and change their team so much because players aren't up to speed. Players have had injuries, and the rhythm's not quite there with so many new signings. And we saw that with players making mistakes. Like Mamardashvili had a pretty decent debut, I thought, but his kicking was a bit shaky, and that made it nervous in the back four. We saw Conor Bradley struggle up against Garnacho. Kerkez was struggling against Neto, and with Bradley, it's a player who's in and out in the starting 11. We know Kerkez's confidence is pretty shot. The midfield just isn't quite working. When you've got Gravenberch being allowed to get forward a bit more, but then McAllister doesn't maybe have the legs. And the front three, it's a new look front three, and it's chopping and changing every week as well. So when that team hasn't got the experience playing together, the confidence is a little bit low, you're going to have these problems. It's going to take time to settle, and that's maybe why we're seeing not mentality issues, but concerns towards the end of the games where Liverpool are conceding these late goals. I disagree with Gorsty in terms of maybe they would need to play in a couple of days. I think the international break has come at a good time because of the injuries they've had, because of the fitness concerns, because those players now have another couple of weeks to get up to speed. But also, they weren't looking like they were going to turn it around. I know it's happened very quickly in terms of 3 defeats in the space of a week, but we thought, okay, go to Galatasaray, turn it around. Go to Chelsea, turn it around. And they didn't really look like they're going to.
You go to turn
they're
around
not easy,
season,
no,
are they?
but it maybe helps for the players to go away on international duty or have 2 weeks off to stew over it, to have that pain, have that change of scenery, and then you're going back into work where it's Manchester United, where for the first time in however long, United are going to be the informed team going into that fixture. it could work in their advantage.
I just to pick up on something Theo said there about Mamardashvili and his kicking. It probably sums it up, the lack of sort of relationships that need to be built upon, and the fact that they're not really there yet. They kept putting it to his right foot, and he's left-footed. So his kicking, as a result, was a bit shaky because he kept having to clear it on his weaker foot. So I don't know whether they're just used to Alisson being there and knowing that he's right-footed, but
Kelleher as well.
Yeah, and that's just something, a little minor thing, but, it sort of hints at this idea that they're not quite there yet in terms of all these new players and how everyone operates. And, for example, Florian Wirtz coming off the bench, and he's still trying to build up his partnership with Mo Salah, and Salah and Isak haven't played a lot together, and didn't really see much of them linking up, did we, until maybe that header at the end of the first half, where if Isak is a little bit sharper, maybe does a little bit better with that one. But just all over the pitch, there are these partnerships that are still in their infancy. So probably should be no real surprise that Liverpool are stuttering to put together a run form.
I'll tell you, it's not a good time in the international break. For us.
Yes.
Because absolutely no one's reading anything, are they? I mean, they would help if you actually bothered to have a look at what we're doing. But you're out listening and watching the podcast, so that's good. I'll tell you what's always a good time for.
Go on.
NordVPN.
Yes.
There we go. To get the best discounts off your NordVPN plan, go to nordvpn.com/bloodred. Our link will also give you 4 extra months on the 2-year plan. There's no risk with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee, Paul and Theo and Ian, our producer. The link is in the podcast episode description box below. And I've managed to get through that without making a mistake. So I've set the template there for everybody.
Seamless
to
pro.
It was, wasn't it?
I clicked on that link before we went on air when I thought I was hosting, and it said we didn't have a protected connection here in Echo HQ. So obviously we need to be on NordVPN so we can access the link.
We absolutely do. And we can be, because they're obviously our sponsors, and we're grateful for them. We're also grateful for you, Paul, turning up for this podcast. Otherwise, just be me and Theo talking.
Someone is.
Are you bothered about the late goals? Because, we talk about Liverpool have been doing it all season in terms of scoring late. Newcastle scored a couple against Bournemouth. They scored a late one against Atletico Madrid. They got a very late one against Burnley. But they've just been on the receiving end the last 2 games, quite late, 97 and 96 minutes, wasn't it? And a couple of weeks ago, it was like, what great mentality to keep going to the end. And suddenly, does it mean what terrible mentality to concede a goal in the last minute?
Yeah, I'm sick of it, to be honest. I just want one Liverpool game where it's done and dusted.
I did send you a nice message when I said what happened.
Yeah, just these late rewrites are no good for anyone. And I should be used to it, but...
Even the one you didn't have to rewrite was a struggle in the derby.
I know, you're still waiting just in case, aren't you? But I mean, I suppose if you are extolling the virtues of the mentality when they're able to score these late goals, I suppose the opposite is true, isn't it?
Or is it even that, or is it anything to do with that?
Yeah, I mean,
if you concede lots of late goals, is that a problem with mentality? I don't necessarily think it is. It could be a problem with some other stuff.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it's just, is it enough to call it a pattern at the moment, 2 in a week? I think Liverpool could have defended Palace's long throw better. Last week I think Slot referenced, I think he was talking about Frimpong, wasn't he? Basically trying to dart off and start an attack before the defending had even finished, and that led to Eddie Nketiah being free at the back post. I haven't had a chance to look back on the highlights of Saturday's game, so I'll tell you what I'm sick of as well. No monitors in the press box. 3 games in a row we haven't had monitors,
How come
have we?
Didn't get them at Chelsea?
Just didn't work.
Oh, so it was there, it just wasn't working properly.
Same with Galatasaray on Tuesday, and I think it was the same with Palace. So I haven't had a chance to see any replays back, so I can only go off what I pictured at the time. But was Andy Robertson, was he miles out of position for Estevao?
He wasn't miles out, but he's a little bit behind. But I suppose there's a similarity there to Frimpong was desperate to attack for the Palace one, whereas Liverpool had just been attacking before, hadn't they? So Robertson had to sprint back.
Yeah.
So some of the pundits have pointed out he was pretty tired by the time he's got back to the far post.
I guess it just comes back to Liverpool just always believing that they can go and win it, late on.
Well, I've actually
not necessarily a bad thing, but at times you do. Like I said, the opening point. Sometimes you might just have to accept that a point isn't the worst thing in the world.
I'll tell you one thing though: the defensive line was really poor for it because it was basically 2 lines of 2.
Well, who was playing centre back?
Gravenberch was still centre back there.
Well, there you go.
You had Szoboszlai and Gravenberch in the back 4. Endo was on for some reason.
Well, I was going to ask you about that now then before we go on to something else, because you mentioned about Liverpool obviously going for the win and this, that and the other. But surely from what I've seen, if Endo comes on, who did he come on for?
McAllister. So that's the reason McAllister's not fit.
Yeah, so if Endo comes on from McAllister, surely that is us taking a step back and trying to defend what they had.
Well, in theory, but it didn't really seem to work. They had two the starting midfield in the back four. They'd already brought off Kirkes as well, so there was a lot of upheaval in that back four, and I get it to an extent. Konaté's injured, so he has to come off. They're already stretched for centre backs, aren't they? But might Joe Gomez have been an option?
What score was it at that point? Was it when Konaté goes off?
Yeah, it was.
Would have been 1-0. Wasn't it?
I think it was still 1-0. Yeah, it wasn't long after the. I mean, it's actually the changes that got Liverpool a little bit of a foothold in the game.
Because no one would have realised Konaté was injured until Slot said it after the game.
Yeah,
it just looked like an attacking change.
Yeah, it looked like he just wanted more ball players in there, and I don't think he's massively convinced on Konaté's ability with the ball. So we got Gravenberch back into centre half. Jones come on, who helped make Liverpool tick a bit more. I thought Wirtz did okay. He was unlucky with, it was a lovely little flick to Salah, who should have stuck it away. And there's been loads of debate and conversation around Florian Wirtz, but if Mo Salah's got his shooting boots on, Wirtz has probably already got 3 or 4 assists. So I feel a little bit for him in that way, but it just felt disjointed, across the entire game, really. Liverpool were better in the second half, but you're still waiting for them to put together a complete performance and that doesn't necessarily mean go and win 4 or 5-0, but when your tails are up, play well, create chances, and when the other team come back into it, defend properly. Liverpool don't seem to be doing that for prolonged spells. So it's a bit of a worry now, isn't it? 3 defeats on the bounce obviously tells its own story, but you can say across the entire season, Liverpool haven't really played well at all. With the caveat of Newcastle away being really tough and Arsenal home, but you're just still waiting for them to put together a little bit of a performance that tells you why they are champions.
Well, they beat Bournemouth, didn't they? That ends up. It looks like it's a much tougher game than it seemed at the time because they're third now. I think they're third or fourth. Yeah. You mentioned Arsenal. They played them at home. They played Newcastle away. They played Everton at home, which is never an easy game.
Palace would have overtaken them if they'd not conceded a last minute.
Exactly, yeah. And Burnley away, it's never going to be easy just because of the way Burnley play, and they won that one. So it could have been easy in terms of the fixtures. I mean, speaking from what I think is that if you'd have said in mid-July that Liverpool would be 1 point off the top after 7 games, I'd have gone absolutely brilliant start to the season. But it's just the way that it's come round. If they'd have lost the first 3 and won the next 5, but they haven't. Yeah,
and we were talking about it before, weren't we? The amount of home games that Liverpool have, or lack of home games. What is it? One game at Anfield since the end of August
in the Premier League.
In the Premier League, which is obviously Everton, which is never easy. Derbies are derbies. Arsenal at home against Everton is a lot more straightforward for them, you'd suggest, than it being Liverpool. And obviously the opposite is true with Liverpool against Tottenham. But
then Arsenal always batter Tottenham as well. You want a rival that can just roll over for you.
But then the next home game is Manchester United at Anfield, and I don't think they play again in the Premier League at home until Villa, which is the 1st of November. So you're crying out for just a bit of a straightforward run-of-the-mill home game, like Arsenal the weekend. West Ham at home.
Well, they lost that last year.
Yeah, they did. But West Ham, one of the struggling teams of the Premier League at the moment, and it feels like Liverpool are going to have to wait 3 months before they get anything of a similar ilk, which might suggest that in a few months Liverpool have a few more straightforward days at the office. But at the moment, every game is its own little vacuum, and it's and they're all difficult.
For the newer players who are coming in, I mean, the likes of Frimpong and Wirtz obviously won the league with Bayer Leverkusen. Slightly different then, because you always think Bayern Munich are going to be the favourites to win the following season, and sure enough they did. But they're coming into a team that's trying to defend a title. The ones who've been there quite a long time, they know exactly what happened in 2020-21. Again, it's hard to compare that because there was no fans there for the most part, but quite a lot of centre-backs disappeared. Liverpool have already had 1 disappear.
Could be 2 with Konaté.
Could be 2 with Konaté, and now Endo's injured as well, it seems. So that could be another one. Is that becoming a little bit of a concern?
A little bit, yeah. When
was it much of a concern before I started that sentence?
I did have the thought when Slot came out and said in the press conference that Konaté was an injury, having initially had that thought when Leone was, it's ACL.
Yeah.
surely they'd have to look at it in January now. And even if Konate isn't a bad injury, the fact that we know he's not comfortable on the ball, there is an issue there to the extent that Slot puts Gravenberch at centre-back so many times. If they'd got Mark Gay, it's a player who's a lot more comfortable on the ball, and you can see why maybe that is something they want to address going forward. But when Liverpool have been leaky at the back, it's not helping having all these changes. And it doesn't help for your new fullbacks as well, because you don't know who's going to be next year, next to Virgil van Dijk, week after week. Now we're seeing a new goalkeeper for a few weeks as well. It's already a different setup for them because Frimpong was used to playing as a wing-back, whereas Kirkes was this fullback who was just allowed to absolutely bomb forward at Bournemouth. Whereas Liverpool, it's more, well, the right-back's going forward, so you're going to have to be a bit more conservative here. So, yeah, it's getting a bit concerning for Liverpool.
I think the other thing as well is that with these new signings, what the point I was initially going to make is that, Kirkes has never played for a big... I know he played at AC Milan, but he didn't really play, did he?
No.
He's never played for a big
He's
team.
still only 21, isn't he? So young.
Again, he was at PSG, but the pressures there are different because they are always going to be favourites, and he didn't to win the French league, and he didn't play. Isak at Newcastle, not quite the same as playing at Liverpool, as much as Newcastle fans won't like me saying that. It's just a matter of fact. They've won one major domestic honour in 70 years. We know that was against. But for them, it's coming into this team, and Liverpool, like all the big teams, a lot of opponents, like whenever United play and whenever Arsenal play, whenever Chelsea play, opponents raise the game for them. But for Liverpool, there's that extra kind of incentive now because they are champions. And as
I think Isak's referenced this himself. It was saying maybe when they got the late winner against Southampton, he found it quite annoying on the opposing side when you're facing Liverpool that you do have that against them, like you raise your level, but Liverpool always find a way.
Because for these teams, maybe it's 2, maybe 4 times each season where they actually go up to those levels, but Liverpool have to come up against that every single time that they play. And it's obviously been the case for someone like Manchester City for years, which is why it's so hard for teams to defend the title, because Liverpool haven't defended any of the trophies they've won for 41 years, which, given the fact that they are the most successful team in English football history, that does underline that it is very, very hard to go again. But obviously this time, go again with half a different team.
And then you've also got the caveat of they're still dealing with Diogo Jota.
Well, exactly, there's that as well.
Yeah, it's so tough for them. And if that doesn't happen, maybe the new signings can rely on the more experienced ones who've got that to carry them through. But then maybe the new players, the experienced players, were hoping the new signings could come in and give them a lift. But because there's so many new signings, it's taking time to gel. And as we've already said, players who weren't fully fit in pre-season, who've coming back, like McAllister and Isak, it's just a bit of a mess. And it's going to take time. But we're seeing that elsewhere as well. Like City haven't been perfect, and they signed a lot of players. Chelsea haven't been perfect. Arsenal signed a lot, but not necessarily for the starting 11. It was more squad players. And we've seen Mohamed Salah make predictions saying, well, they're the favourites because they've got the stability. And that's what Liverpool had last year. It was always going to be which side's new signings settled quickest is going to be the strongest ones to go for the title this year. So it's not a surprise what's happening with Liverpool, but it's going to take time. Hopefully, once you get past the international break, that makes a difference, because Arne Slot did say you'd expect to see more from Alexander Isak, for example. So if he has a good international break with Sweden, scores a couple of goals, he's looking sharper for Liverpool at the other side of it, then you might get a bit more from Salah, a bit more from Wirtz, but you are just waiting for it all to click into place.
Well, we know what happens to Mikel Arteta if Arsenal don't win the league or Champions League. And everybody knows now, thanks to our producer Ian, who clipped that. And it's gone everywhere. Thank you.
Yeah.
Right. Did you get any comments on it, or is it not been picked up?
Well, to be fair, I've been saying it for months anyway, haven't I? So it's not. I'm quite happy with that one.
It might be picked up at the end of the season when Chelsea or Arsenal win the league or something. Or
they'll say good. Yeah, it was.
That's not the first time this podcast has been picked up 12 months later, is it? To make a story.
No, it is not, especially when it's been involved in Chelsea. Now, Theo, I shall speak to you now because you saw this. I've not actually seen it, but some pundits are fuming about Liverpool, as they would say in a PLC headline.
Yes,
and it's Gary Neville of
Yes.
Sky Sports and Steve Nicol of, I've forgotten where he's from,
ESPN
in America, that is. They're not very happy with Liverpool. One of them said one of the Liverpool players looked like a baby, and the other one said that they were a shambles.
Yes, Gary Neville tore into a lot of the Liverpool players, but he said Milos Kerkez looks naive, he looks like a youth team player, he looks like a baby, and he said then Liverpool's forward players were absolutely useless against Chelsea, which is a bit harsh considering
They did score.
They did look all right at times, and Nicol basically had to go at all the changes Slot was making, putting the midfielders in defence, saying it's desperation football, they look desperate, it's a shambles. And let's be honest, it wasn't the best performance against Chelsea, but it wasn't that. It wasn't that awful. Like, the pundits have really gone to town and hammered the individual players. And maybe that's easy when they've lost 3 games in a row. But this is a side that for literally a year had been top of the Premier League table. This is the first time they've lost that, and they're still only a point behind. Maybe when you're used to a side winning week after week, when you take the opportunity to hammer them, the pundits are, and it is the story at the moment, the Liverpool aren't playing very well, that the players are taking time to adjust. But yeah, I thought some of the criticism was a little bit too far. And we're seeing it again today where, say, Rooney's coming out and having a pop at Salah. All of them are coming out and picking out individual players.
Well, again, this goes back to what I was saying before. That's what happens. Yeah. If you're really good at something, then suddenly you don't become very good. Then people tend to have a go. As speaking from my own experience, that's never happened to me because I've never been any good at anything.
Yeah, and we see it ourselves, don't we? You know, day to day, the size of the club. You know, so when the likes of these pundits do get a chance to stick the boot in a little bit, they know that their words will carry traction. So I'm not surprised to hear, you know, those names you mentioned there having a go. I have to say, though, maybe he's gone a little bit over the top, but Gary Neville's got a point with Kirkes. I think he's still struggling to show why Liverpool have invested, you know, £40 million in him in the summer. I'm a bit concerned of what's happening on the other side. Frimpong or Bradley at right back, you know, I think that's something Slot needs to decide on and settle quick, because Szoboszlai's done sort of varying degrees of okay to good, hasn't he, at right back? Thought he played well against Arsenal and Newcastle, but since then it's been a little bit tougher for him, and he's a central midfielder. Get him back into midfield and settle on a pair of full-backs, and then you've got something to build from. But I wanted to ask you, Doyle, about McAllister. Generally, you know, I know you're a massive fan of him, but it feels like he is yet to show the sort of form that he was at. You know, certainly, his best part of last season. Has that injury, doesn't he, after Liverpool win the league, misses the last few games, doesn't really get a pre-season. I'm still waiting for him to get back to those levels. Are you concerned at all? You know,
I mean, we never did find out what the injury was, and I get the impression that we're never going to be told until many years down the line. So we don't exactly know what it is. Again, we spoke about this on Friday. Actually, we're pretty sure he hasn't had surgery, and if he has, he hasn't told anybody. So this has been something that they've been managing, but he's clearly miles off. And of course, the difference is he's now in a team that if he was miles off in a team that was doing okay, you could kind of absorb that.
Yeah.
But when it's with all these other players and the other players are looking towards him as, you know, he's one of the top 6 players last season voted for by his fellow professionals. And, you know, we've mentioned if you take Salah's goals away, I think McAllister was probably Liverpool's best player. I thought he was even better than Gravenberch, who did all his best work in the first half of the season. So I think with McAllister, he does need to be sharper, and Liverpool are missing him for 2 reasons. One, for the position that he's in, he starts a lot of play. I think he did. One of the goals against Everton started from him. So he does a lot of that from that deeper position, but also he gets stuck in, puts the boot in. You know, a number of times he's always on the floor, you know, because he's picked up a little bit of a knock, that kind of thing. But because he's off the pace, he's not been able to get as close to the opposing players as he would have liked. And I mean, that's not to do with him getting old, because how old is he? About 25? So it's
26.
Yeah, so that only comes from fitness now. If he was still injured and he still was getting bothered by the injury, I just can't see how Liverpool will be playing him, and they want to get the situation resolved. So I would imagine that he's physically fit, but he's just, as you said, because he didn't do any of the work in the summer that the others did, he's that far behind. The only good thing is that Liverpool expect to play, you'd reckon, 50, 52, 53 games. We haven't even had 20% of the season. So there's, anybody writing anyone off. I mean, how many league games to go? 31. You know, it's a very, very long time, and they're only the 1 point behind Arsenal. I mean, I've said I expect Arsenal to win the league for, funny enough, all the reasons we've been talking about now.
Been saying that for the last 2-3 years.
What I said a long time ago. So back in the summer, because it's not easy for all these reasons, and having so many players coming in. You know, we talk about this every single week. There will come a time where they get settled, but my view is that Liverpool just need to get as many points as they can before Christmas, and then once they've got that out the way, they can kind of have a look. January transfer window will be there. I know half the season will be gone, but those 5 wins at the start of the season have bought them a bit of time, which is they're going to. If Liverpool are going to do anything in the Premier League this season, those 5 wins will be massively important because look at the games coming up. United at home, Brentford away, Villa at home, Man City away. Anyone back in Liverpool to win all 4? I don't think so. I think Arsenal's games, equivalent games, are a lot easier. I know they got Tottenham at home towards the end of their run, but I think they've got Palace at home, they'll win that. They got Fulham away, they'll win that, and they've got somebody else away of no great import, I suspect. So,
if only you had a laptop, you can check the fixtures.
I know, yeah, I just want to get off the top of my head. So yeah, there is that. But going back to the McAllister thing, then there's a decision to be made because you mentioned Szoboszlai. Does Szoboszlai then go in alongside Gravenberch?
Yeah, I think he has to.
But we've seen previously when he's played on the left of the two, he's not been quite as good. But that was more under Jurgen Klopp when he played on the left when it was the more forward two, if you see what I mean, because it used to be more 4-1-2-3 under Klopp, and when he played on the left, he wasn't anywhere near as effective as on the right. But if you've got a good player who can play in various positions, then he should be in the team, especially when you've got so many players who are struggling, which, funny enough, leads me on to another point about Hugo Ekitike, who I know he was banned against Crystal Palace, and he took a knock against Galatasaray midweek. But assuming that he's fit and he comes through, the France games, I think they're playing Azerbaijan and Iceland. See, I remember that. Should he be starting against Man United? And I don't necessarily
That's a question
mean,
for next week's podcast.
I know, but I don't necessarily mean down the middle either.
Or would you play him off the left?
Well, you could do, couldn't you? But then Gakpo scored. I mean, I had some people fuming at me saying Gakpo should have been off long before he scored, and then I pointed out, well, if he was off, then he wouldn't have scored.
Yeah, I don't think he's got anywhere near the level that he was at last season. I don't know whether that's come from a number of factors, really, but obviously he hasn't got the competition there that he had last season with Luis Diaz, vying for the position alongside him. He knows very much now that he's the senior player in that left wing role, and Rio Ngamoa is, a sort of Carabao Cup backup. So maybe that has fed into the performances in general. We're still waiting to see what Ekitike is like off the left. We've played there occasionally. I think he played there for a bit on Tuesday, did he, before he went off against Galatasaray.
He joked about it in that interview with the BBC where he said when he was young, but then he had a growth spurt in his teen years and he's not really played there since. I'd imagine he maybe did it PSG, where you take what you can get when you're behind Messi, Neymar and Mbappe. But
he certainly played as a second striker.
Yeah.
Or he's played as two, so that wouldn't be...
Because Marmouche was the lead one when they were at Frankfurt, with him only stepping up after. But then if
that happens, then it's a completely different, tactical approach.
Yeah, and he's the only player bought in the summer who's shown what he can do so far, I think. So, I think maybe you have to find a place for him, but also the Isak fitness plan goes on, doesn't it? I was surprised that Isak started on Saturday. I thought might have been one for Ekitike to return, in the Premier League, and Isak gets half an hour again. But I think Slot said recently, didn't he, that he expects Isak to be as close to 100% after the international break. So maybe he's going to play for Sweden. They're playing Kosovo again and Switzerland. That's it. Yeah. So we didn't play a whole lot, did he, in the September international break? I think it was 15 minutes against Kosovo.
16 or something.
Yeah.
Like that,
so it'll be nice to see him get a few more minutes under his belt, and then you can make a bit more of an informed decision over your front three back in the next week, I guess, for Slot.
Well, this is interesting with the players, or the European ones anyway, because they've got World Cup qualifiers. So if they're going out, it's competitive game time. Whereas McAllister, they've already qualified, haven't they? It's 2 friendlies.
They've finished,
so they're going to the United States, I think, to play Venezuela and Puerto Rico. So it's like, well, is he going to go and get a lot of game time, or do they manage him carefully?
You're not going to 2-foot Venezuela and Puerto Rico.
Not at all.
No.
It's just different when it's a friendly. It's like, is that a good thing for McAllister or a bad thing?
Yeah.
Would you rather he plays those games, or would you rather go, you know what, just have 2 weeks off?
What I'd say about that is that if you're playing against Argentina and you're Venezuela and Puerto Rico, they're not friendlies.
I think Puerto Rico, I'm not too sure if they're any good. I'm
going to go with that because they're probably not as good.
Yeah, so that might be one where he gets half an hour or whatever, but I'm sure Venezuela will be up for it, whatever it is. Miami, is it?
Yeah.
Is it Miami?
And then maybe Chicago for the second one, something like that. They're both in the United States anyway.
Have you been to Chicago?
No.
It's nice. It is good, like.
Is it?
Yeah, it's really nice. Yeah, it's like a mini New York, I'd say.
Right. Yeah, Philadelphia's a bit like that.
Yeah. It's got a pier as well, because the lake next to... Anyway, we're going off point.
It's almost as though it's the international break.
Exactly, yeah. So, bringing us back, we've touched on all of the various positions down the wings. So I'll ask you, do Liverpool have a problem with the width? Because you've got your left winger, Gakpo, who's not quite reaching his level. We've got the right winger, Salah, who definitely isn't. And you've got two fullbacks who are just, they can't decide on who they want to play.
Yeah.
And with the possible exception, I'd say, of Andy Robertson in terms of performances, he's the only one that, having not seen the Chelsea game, he's done anything like anywhere near he could be. There's been spells a little bit from Conor Bradley, I'd say, and Kirkes possibly in the first couple of games, but overall, there doesn't seem to be anything coming from out wide. Now, if you're a striker called Alexander Isak and you're used to service from out wide, because he's not the same as Ekitike, who drops deep, he's not the same as before them, Roberto Firmino, and if you look at last season, Luis Diaz ended up playing there, who's not even a striker at all. He needs this kind of creativity from out wide, and they're not getting anything, which is possibly why. I know Ekitike scored a few goals, but they're not getting as many chances as you would think that they would do.
Yeah, I mean, he had a decent chance towards the end of the first half from Salah's cross. Like I mentioned, if he was a bit sharper, he might have worked Sanchez. But yeah, generally the chances aren't falling for him, are they, too much?
The goal comes from a rare cross, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's a Boslai's cross, isn't it? And he takes it down well, and Gakpo is alert. But yeah, you know, he's not getting many chances, but he just doesn't look anywhere near sharp and fit. And this is the knock-on effect of how his transfer played out. And Liverpool always pursued him, knowing this full well, that he wouldn't be coming in 100%. So they've got to work on a really specific plan to get him up to fitness as soon as possible. Because you think before he started, or before he played, when was his debut? Trying to remember when it was now. So he didn't play against Burnley, did he? So he played the following game. Atletico, yeah. So that was his first appearance for like 4 or 5 months, going back to May when he plays for Newcastle. I think it was against Everton, was it? Last game of the season.
He had the Sweden.
Yeah. So, you know, that's still not a lot of football, is it, that he's played in between at Liverpool. So, still waiting for him to get up to 100%. So, I don't think Liverpool are going to be concerned by it long term, but this is the upshot of it when you've got a player who's not at 100%, but you have to persevere with him to get him there. So, yeah, just not getting too many chances, really. And I thought he was unlucky in one of the games recently. I'm trying to think what it was. I can't even remember what it was now, but he had a decent chance, and you just think if he was 100% fit, he might have stuck that away. It was Palace, where he sort of drifts in off the left. I think McAllister plays him through, and then he puts it wide, and could have had a shout for a penalty, really. But, you know, if he was fully firing on all cylinders, that might have ended up in the back of the net. It was a little bit of a sighter of what he can do, but I think Liverpool are just going to have to get on with it, essentially, and just get him to play through it until he is at the levels that he was at, you know, fitness-wise for Newcastle.
This is all the teething problems and the what-ifs because of everything in the summer, the injuries and the number of transfers. Like, if it was a settled side he's coming into when he's not fully fit, but your wingers are fine, your midfielders are 3 you can rely on, you know, can play together, then you can get away with it, can't you? Because they're going to create chances for him. He's not going to be 100%, but he's going to take some of them. Instead, we're looking at it going, McAllister's not fully fit. Maybe you could take him out the side and put Curtis Jones in there. Oh, Curtis Jones has had an injury. Okay, maybe you can put Szoboszlai in there, but we might need Szoboszlai at number 8. Verts isn't doing it, so we might need him at number 10. And then it's also, they've tweaked the midfield setup slightly. Like we've heard Ryan Gravenberch say a few times, he's enjoying the fact that he can get forward more, but him getting forward more puts more strain on the one who's next to him, if that's McAllister or Szoboszlai, who's not naturally suited to him. And then you bring in the fullbacks going, well, Kirkes hasn't hit the ground running, he's struggling. Slot, for some reason, is a bit reluctant to give Robertson the equal game time there. And then the right back's not settled because Frimpong had an injury, because Bradley had an injury. Yeah. So there's all these things where if that was settled, then you'd maybe get more from a striker, or you could get away with McAllister's injury. But because it's all happening at once, he's having to chop and change, and it's just nothing's working.
These are reasons, not excuses. Anyway, we'll go to some questions, or some comments, shall we say, from people who are watching live. Hello, if you are doing that. We've got one here from Alex McConnell, who says, bring back Joe, which I'm assuming means Joe Rimmer, not Joe Gomez. In which case, Alex, tough, he's never coming back. And we've made sure of that, don't you worry. Joshua Leone says, can you do better, Liverpool? I don't know why you're losing all the time. Start winning.
Any relation to Giovanni?
It may be his brother. I'm going to go with no, it's not. But that's a sentiment we can get behind. I've also pressed something that's gone wrong. Gibson Fender, who obviously plays a guitar. Slot is tinkering and he's really getting it wrong, which we'll pause there for a moment because, as we know, social media is where you get the very best reaction from supporters, very level-headed and in no way emotive and going too far one direction. Some of them have said that Slot's been found out because Liverpool, I think it's 10 of the last 25 games they've lost in all competitions going back to...
Is that right, yeah?
Yeah, I think Paris Saint-Germain, it was 40. Is that right, actually? I haven't thought about it.
Uh-huh.
Does that count as friendlies? It doesn't sound right to me.
Lost 10 of 25?
That doesn't sound right.
They've lost 3 now.
So they lost 4 at the end of last season.
So Newcastle, PSG.
Yeah. Are they counting the 3 friendlies? Did they lose 3 friendlies?
Didn't lose any, did they?
Well, whoever's done that,
Lost
that's just...
Milan.
They lost to Milan,
Yeah, they lost no nonsense.
Do we count Community Shield? Is that a
Yeah,
draw
you would count that as a defeat, I suppose. Yeah. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
And then, how many did they lose at the end of last season?
Brighton, Chelsea.
Fulham.
Fulham.
Fulham,
yeah.
Fulham, Newcastle, and PSG. So it might be right.
Okay.
So yeah. So there you go. So they're even worse than we thought. Anyway, the point being is that some people think Slot's been found out and he's got to go.
Do you know what? I think because, I mean, I'm just not entertaining any of that, but I think because Liverpool, I think I mentioned it after the Palace defeat, basically Liverpool went a year without suffering a meaningful Premier League defeat. You know, they got beat against Forest in September. They lose to Fulham, like you mentioned, in whenever that was, April. And then after that, they were Premier League champions, so they lose to Chelsea. It doesn't mean a whole lot. They lose to Brighton, doesn't mean a whole lot. So the next time they lose, which has got a little bit of significance to it, was last week against Crystal Palace. And now they've obviously lost again against Chelsea. So the fact that they don't lose too many games, perhaps people have forgotten how you react to them, how best to sort of absorb them and
like I said
analyse
earlier,
them. Because
top of the table for a year.
There's been some wild talk, and I never like to entertain it at the best of times, but it has really gone crazy at times in the last week.
We'll point out as well that I think in the last run of Premier League winning managers, it's only Klopp and Guardiola who actually survived a decent amount after winning it that final time. Like we saw, Ranieri lost his job quickly, Mourinho lost his job quickly, Conte, Pellegrini. Now, I'm not saying Slot should go. I'm just saying how knee-jerk.
Are you sure?
I'm sure, because
Okay.
I don't think he should do. On many of these podcasts recently, we've gone through quite logically all the reasons why it's not yet working for Liverpool and why it should do in time. But football is very knee-jerk, and that seems to be in the boardroom at most clubs as well as on social media. But we know how Liverpool run with FSG, that they're a lot more level-headed there. Obviously, the data-driven as well. They'll know all the wider issues here and be a bit more relaxed about the situation.
I tell you what, I'm looking forward to, though, when Liverpool finally get rid of the sort of the bugs in the system and they start firing, you know, with the players that they brought in, with the reputations that have brought them to the club. Because I think that'll be quite an exciting time when they start winning 3s and 4s.
7 against United.
It doesn't really seem to happen very often, does it?
Well, it's funny you should say that because the Mauler man, I don't think that's his real name, they're trying to play 6 starters into form and fitness. When it clicks, kaboom, he's put, and the A is small, the rest of the letters in kaboom are big. So that gives you the emphasis of the noise he's trying to make. Kevin Mannix points out that Liverpool have more points from these games this year compared to last season. I think it's 1 extra point, but what I would say is I think Arsenal have got 7 more points than they got.
Yeah, but the Chelsea game last season didn't matter, neither did the Arsenal game.
Well, they got 2 extra points. Yeah, they got 2 extra points from the Arsenal game. They got 2 extra points from Newcastle, but they lost 3 against Palace. So they've got 1 extra on. But I think Arsenal's is 7 or something. It's a lot basically. So that's why they're top. SDP. SDP? That used to be a political party before your time. Slot's team now, his responsibility, as mentioned previously, most general players way off the pace, as are some others. And the interesting question he asks is, where's the motivation from the management team?
Where's the motivation?
Yeah. I'll just put that on your toes there.
I don't know.
I think it's more on the lines of, as they are struggling, that there is a new question being asked of the coaching team because they haven't really had to contend with this before.
I'd have said
at Liverpool, I mean, obviously elsewhere, because and don't forget that there have been some changes behind the scene. Heitinger's no longer there. It's Van Bronckhorst who to be fair, won quite a lot as a player, and wherever he's been as a manager, he tends to have won some stuff as well. So he knows how to get teams motivated. But it is a different thing. The 3 defeats in a row, the fact that the first time the questions are being asked, and these new players, all the reasons we've just mentioned, it's a different set of challenges for not just Slot, but also the people who work with the players day to day.
It is, yeah. But there's still relatively short time at the club, aren't they, as a coaching team? It's not even 18 months, is it? They've obviously hugely exceeded expectations the last time out. So I've heard a lot of talk that last season was expected to be the transition one, but this season might be the real one where they are developing and sort of changing the style and stuff. And I think there's some merit in that. You look at the turnover in players. It's not just necessarily the new players they brought in for big money who were trying to adapt and adjust. It's the quality that's left the club as well, of course, and Núñez and Diaz, players like Harvey Elliott, Jarell Quansah, Queeve Keller. There's a lot of players who've left the club as well, so it's trying to stay at that level while you're making a lot of changes, and sometimes you do have the odd hiccup and teething problem here or there. So I think I was saying last week that this feels like this Chelsea game felt like an ideal time for them to put in a bit of a performance of champions and just show why they are where they are, but didn't quite happen, did it? So on to the next one. United at home feels as good an opportunity as any to blow away the cobwebs on the other side of the break.
Issue for Theo to solve now. Nikolai Holmeny, I think I pronounced that correctly. I'm very interested in how Slot will solve a pressing with both Isaac and Salah in the team. Isak is a shadow presser and Salah doesn't do any.
A shadow presser?
Yeah. And obviously he just runs up behind people a little bit and then just gives them a little bit of spook.
Well, it's a changing setup anyway, isn't it? Like we've said, Gravenberch's getting forward a bit more, and the number 10's different in terms of it wasn't Szoboszlai's endless running. It's going to be Wirtz, who's more of a Coutinho number 10. If we go back way when there. So it's work in progress again. It's Liverpool just having to find a way to adapt. And maybe last year we saw them thrive where Salah didn't have to work as hard defensively. The team could cover that. But we've seen this season, like Cucurella came out and said it on Saturday, we know he's not going to come back as much. We know he's going to counter-attack, and we're going to look to exploit that. And to be fair, Chelsea did. It's partly where the winning goal comes from, going down that flank. It's not saying Salah was horribly out of position or anything, but this is something that teams look at. So it is something that Liverpool need to address, and it'll be interesting how they do. But it's so many players in different positions trying to come up with slight tweaks on what worked last year. And it's not as though Liverpool were flawless in the entire season. Like we saw them come a little bit unstuck that February, March time, and they weren't at the best when they were eventually getting to the league, apart from that one game where they absolutely battered Tottenham to win it. So it's something that's been there behind the scenes for a while, something they're going to carry on working on. But yeah, Liverpool, it's not a team at the moment because it's so many new players trying to click at once.
Do you have anything else to say?
No, I think Theo summed it up quite nicely there. You're just waiting for these players to get settled in, aren't you? I think Mamardashvili did okay actually on his Premier League debut. He's obviously got big shoes to fill in Alisson Becker, but did about as well as could be expected. He's obviously going to have to develop and understand them with his back four now, whoever's in it, over the next however many weeks as Alisson recovers from his annual muscle injury. But yeah, it's there are things to solve, and I think the biggest problem at the moment for Slot will be that he won't get most of his players back until the sort of back end of next week, which won't give him much time on the training pitch to try and put things right before United on Sunday.
What I find quite interesting about it is we were all in agreement last year when they were so good winning the league that Slot was the right coach to get that next level from them after Jurgen Klopp. It wasn't as sentimental. It was very Dutch, very forthright. But then this year, it feels maybe at the moment they need more of that arm around the shoulder, that man management side to it. But we don't necessarily know what Slot's like as a man manager because everything went so well for him last year. Like he comes out and sometimes he'll say something that is very Dutch, like when he
just 2 foot in Dutch people.
But no, when he pointed at Frimpong for the Palace goal, and it prompts a response going, "Oh, I wasn't expecting him to come out and say that publicly." And then it looks like
he never named him.
He never named him, but you can make the guess, can't you? And it looks like he's calling out one of his players in front of everyone. And that's not the first time he's done it. But then at the weekend, he did come out and defend Mohamed Salah quite well, didn't he? Saying he didn't get a goal or assist, but he was creating chances, etc., etc., etc. Like, we don't see what he's like on the training pitch with those players, and if he's geeing them up. If they're got the bottom lips out and they're sulking a bit because, managers said this, or if they are just going through a tough spell, they're all united and they're going to go and put it right. But it's 3 games in 1 week. It feels very intense because it is 3 matches in a row, but it was just 7 days. They haven't been at the best, but for the majority, they'd still been finding a way to get the results. 2 weeks off playing for the countries. Hopefully that can be something to get out the system and go again.
And just so you know, shadow pressing, because Nikolai came back and he said he's blocking lanes. So Isak is obviously just getting in the opposing defenders' way, as opposed to literally running up to them and just harassing them.
I really think Liverpool could just do with, just like I mentioned it before, just a bit of a standard home game where 3 o'clock on a Saturday and it's pretty straightforward, 2-0, and it just.
How often did that happen?
Well, I know
it
doesn't seem to happen. Considering Liverpool won the league last season,
even the year before,
it didn't seem to happen a lot, does it? But yeah, they are the sort of the way the fixture list is shaken up for them, and they're not really going to get anything similar now, are they? Until was it 1st of November they play Aston Villa, but even that's very difficult as well. So Slot is right, isn't he, when he says there are no easy games? And like you mentioned before, Doyle, every team tries to raise their level a little bit more when they play the champions, which something Man City found out last season.
I'll tell you what, there's no easy podcasts either.
Mm.
I think that should do us. When are we back on again, Ian? He doesn't know. He says Thursday or Friday. It's up to us to sort it out between ourselves. But whatever, other way, we'll see you later this week. Cheerio.